This is North Pod, a North Melbourne fan podcast, hosted by Jason Hunt.
Stevenson with his own move. Carrington. North are in front.
Hello and welcome back once again to North Pod. It is AFLW talk, and we are going to be reviewing the big game against the Crows on Friday night. And officially now we are 10 out of 11 games done and dusted in this home and away season. We've gotten the job done in, I suppose, 9.5 of those games. We had the draw against Geelong, but we are still the only side to have not lost this season. Massive win against a fellow top 10 contender in the Crows, so plenty of points to pull out from this game on their home deck, no less. So a massive win. Prime time Friday night, and we stood up. So super exciting. I don't know about you, but I am definitely now looking ahead to finals. Just, we've gotten this last game out of the way against another contender. Sure, we've got one more home and away game to go against the Suns, but I think it's fair to say now that we can absolutely look ahead to, what might be happening. I'm thinking about how do we get Emma Carney back in? How do we fit her into the side? And don't get me wrong, she definitely gets in. That's not what I'm trying to say at all. But more so, who comes out is a question that I've started thinking about. Anyway, let's jump right into team selection. And to be honest, nothing to talk about because there were no changes to the selected side. We've been as consistent as possible all year, which is fantastic. We've obviously had some really good form, so there hasn't been really any opportunity or need to drop players. We haven't had many injuries. Obviously, the big one is to Emma Carney. We've had Shierlaw with a little niggle. We've rested Bruton once. And then Lulu Puller worked her way back into full fitness, but she's only been able to play one or two games. So it's been a very consistent side all year. We stayed unchanged for this game, and I think we all expected that we would, if we could, given that this was our last big home and away test before finals, and we wanted to play our best possible side. I do wonder if that'll change next week. I guess we can chat about that at the end of the podcast, but you would have to think that it's going to cross the selectors' minds in terms of do we rest some players against the Suns in the final round. Ideally, we win the qualifying final and then we get another week off. So there is always that debate around, do you want to rest players and then all of a sudden they've only played one game out of nearly 4 weeks, so to speak, by the time prelim final weeks comes around. I guess, let's chat about that later in the pod, but unchanged this week, which was fantastic. And then, let's have a look at the match result. So we defeated the Crows. They were 4-9-33. We were 6-5-41. So an 8-point win to North Melbourne. And we ground out a win. It certainly wasn't our best performance for the year, but it was a pretty professional performance, I thought. We fell behind at times early in the first quarter and also in the second quarter, but each of those times we fought back and countered, I think, harder than the Crows were able to handle. We had a big third quarter where we were able to kick 2 goals to their none and really put some distance, and ended up being 20 points up at 3-quarter time. And, from then on, we were just able to defend in the last quarter. We did concede a couple, but I thought, shut the game down with repeat stoppages, really congested the footy. And, whilst we weren't necessarily kicking scores at that point, we stopped the Crows from winning it. And because we were always, I think it might have got down to, we were always 8 or 9 points up, is what I'm trying to say there in the last quarter. So even if something did go wrong and we did concede a goal, we had that space, I suppose, to allow that to happen if things went wrong. There was a moment there where it looked like we could have potentially, Jenna Bruton, I think, to be honest, it was pretty inconsequential contact, but it looked as though she threw an opponent to the ground after they took a mark. It wasn't paid 50, but if it was, then that would have put the Crows either just outside of scoring range or on the boundary, but certainly pretty close to goal. So that would have been a little bit nervous if that had happened, but I'm glad that wasn't paid 50, because to me it looked like the Adelaide player put it on. So, yeah, a really professional performance. I think we should be really proud. The girls did a fantastic job of just sticking to the structures and really just outlasting the Crows, to be honest. I think, I guess let's jump to story of the game, because that's really what my next point's going to be here. I think we wore them down, and there's definitely parts in the first quarter and the second quarter and early in those quarters where the Crows got on top. But I thought as the game went on, we were able to, get into our structures. We were able to find the footy more consistently and get more penetration, and I think apply more pressure, withstand the pressure that the Crows were putting on us. And, despite the fact that it was a much more even contest statistically than most of the games that we've played this year, I think we did a great job of kind of taking their punches, absorbing them, and then just hitting back harder, particularly late in quarters, and almost always off turnover. I certainly know our first 3 goals came from turnover, and it seemed as though the plan was to really, get them out the back by pushing up really high. Our half forwards were pushing a long way up the ground and creating a lot of space out the back. And, ultimately that meant that when we did turn them over at half back or even deeper, if we went quickly, we were able essentially just to play, a running game where it was either a hand pass to a linking player, or we were kicking it forward and then it was a sprint to see who could get to the ball first. We know that we've got some really mobile tools. Shierlaw's very quick in a straight line. Talia Randall is really quick as well. And then, we've got a host of small and medium types that are really quick across the ground as well. So whether or not it was a deliberate tactic or just a function of how the game was being played, we turned them over and we just sliced them up. And, at times it felt as though the Crows would have 5 or 6 minutes of fairly solid play where the ball was living in their half and they were kind of probing and trying. We turned them over and immediately score a goal, and just put a real dent in how they were feeling. So yeah, the turnover game was really strong for us. Whilst we were also good at clearance, we weren't necessarily converting clearances to, scoring opportunities. It was the turnovers that were resulting in goals. And yeah, we did a great job of just running back with the flight and taking advantage of those opportunities. We won the inside 50s by just 2, so 34 to 32. And the Crows had 1 more disposal. So it was a very even contest in that, in that context. There were certainly areas of the ground and areas, statistically speaking, that we didn't win. So I will talk about those a little bit later. But yeah, possession and territory battle were areas that were, pretty even. It was just that we were able to do more damage when we went forward. And yeah, like I said, took our opportunities where sometimes the Crows didn't. It was 4-9 to 6-5, so 13 scoring shots for the Crows and 11 for us. I do think does tell a little bit of a story. Some of those points for the Crows were rushed, but certainly we took our opportunities and the Crows just didn't. So ultimately, that's why we were able to head out on top, 8-point winners. Like I said off the top, a really, really massive win for us. It means that of all the other strong sides that we've come up against, we've been able to beat them in the home and away season, which is something that even last year we weren't really able to do. We were losing those tight games against the better sides in the home and away season before then, those 2 big finals wins. So the fact that we've been able to beat Adelaide, we've beaten Melbourne, who potentially aren't as strong as they have been. We've beaten Brisbane, we beat Richmond, really, really promising. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to play the Hawks in the home and away season, and they're the other side that are going to finish in the top 2 alongside us. So they're a side that, potentially could surprise us come finals time if we were to play them in either a prelim or a grand final, just because we haven't played them. We also haven't been able to play Freo, who are currently sitting in the top 8. So that's another side that could potentially surprise us. But, every test that we've had, we've been able to overcome it for the most part, and I think that's what's really encouraging about this North Melbourne side heading into finals. It's, I just feel so confident watching them play. There was certainly times during that last quarter that I was a little bit nervous, but then we regrouped, we shut them down, and we got the job done. So as a North Melbourne supporter, oddly enough, I just feel pretty calm watching the footy at the moment, and hopefully that can continue into finals. But I have a feeling when the pressure gauge goes up a little bit, things might potentially change. Let's have a look at the 5 stars, the best 4 North Melbourne players on the ground, and the best Adelaide Crows player. Easy to pick the best on ground. Jasmine Garner, she is on an absolute run at the moment, but I have to give the 4 votes to her. 27 disposals, 2 goals, 8 tackles, 5 clearances, 530 metres gained, which is a massive number. A goal assist, 6 inside 50s, had 5 intercepts, and just was by far the most impactful player on the ground. Her 2 goals, essentially came from nothing. She just grabbed it out of a stoppage situation and snapped goals. Massive in the context of us kicking 6. She's kicked 2 of them as a midfielder that, can go forward and be dangerous. Her entries inside 50 were usually pretty deep, and her clearances were where she got a lot of her metres. Oftentimes it was, I think she had 5 clearances, did I say? Yes. And just, like I said, got massive meters on it. We know that in the women's league, a lot of the time it is just about getting the meters on the ball and then winning that next contest. So she had some really deep kicks, quick kicks from clearances that were super effective and, were generally speaking heading to a contest or heading to a fellow North Melbourne player. Like I said, easily the most impactful player on the ground for me. Just continues this massive run of form that she's been on. I thought she was a little slow to start the season by her standards, but the past 6 or 7 weeks have just been phenomenal for Jazzy Garner. So I've got to give her the 4 votes. I think for the 3 votes, it has to be Kate Shierlaw. 18 disposals, also kicked 2 goals, had 5 marks. 2 of those were contested, 3 inside 50s. And I think whilst she didn't absolutely fill the stats sheet with goals like she has a couple of times this year, 2 goals in a more low-scoring affair, and the fact that she was also able to take 2 contested marks and touch the footy 18 times for a key forward is phenomenal. She kicked those important goals at important times, took the big marks, but I think the other part that we saw her do in this game was she was able to head behind the ball and play sort of a floating centre-half back role late in quarters when we were just trying to defend and make sure we didn't concede. That's part of the reason that she was able to rack up 18 touches, is that she was playing at the other end of the ground at times during this game. We've seen her do that throughout the year. It's not something that she does all the time, and I guess it's just such a great weapon to have when you're playing against a better side and you're not necessarily dominating the territory battle like we are in a lot of other games. You can throw a player like her back there and you're confident that she's going to give you some drive, but she's also able to take those intercept marks and sit in the hole, which is something that we weren't necessarily able to create from our defensive players, particularly in the first 3 quarters. We really struggled to fill the hole, so I thought she did a great job of that. She was opportunistic with her goal kicking, didn't necessarily get a lot of chances, but took them. So Kate Shierlaw, another one like Garner in some fantastic form of late. I have to give her the 3. And then Ash Riddell, she's been a little unlucky recently because she's just doing her thing. 25 touches, 3 marks, 7 tackles, 6 clearances, a goal assist, 4 intercepts. Just typical grunt work from her. Accumulated, was cool and composed, a really nice balance of inside and outside game, contested and uncontested footy. And, like I've said about her all season, she's not necessarily the flashiest player on the ground. At times you feel like she's not hurting you, but it's just death by 1,000 cuts for her. Another consistent performance, and she's been pretty unlucky. She's probably been the 5th or 6th best player a lot recently, so I've given her the 2 votes just based on, she had a fantastic game, but also her consistent performances across the last little while. And then for the 1 vote, as always, it was tough to leave some out, but Tess Craven's gone back-to-back with the 1 vote. She had 13 disposals, 12 of those kicks, 4 marks, 3 tackles, went at 85% disposal effectiveness. And when you consider the fact that she's almost exclusively kicking the footy, that's some really fantastic, efficient work, hitting targets coming off half-back. I think, she played her role defensively, shut down her opposition player when she needed to, but was just providing some great drive off half-back. There were times throughout the game where we were finding it difficult to transition the footy, and I think Tess did a really good job of getting us going and taking the game on when she needed to. Got a really good penetrating kick. I think that's something that she's developed in the last 18 months. Not necessarily that she couldn't kick the footy, because she definitely could, but I do think, or certainly to my eye, she's getting a bit more meterage on the footy, which is important when you're kicking it out of half-back. I just thought, similar to last week, she had a really consistent game. Not necessarily one that you're going to get the plaudits for from the media, because it's a pretty thankless job playing off halfback in the AFLW. But yeah, I thought she was worthy of the votes again. In terms of who's unlucky, I mean, look, like I say most weeks, half the side. I thought Bresnahan was good off halfback. She could have earned her first votes for the year, but I thought Craven was probably just a touch above with her level of disposal. Mia King did her thing, was tight and tough again, and had a couple of really big moments. Similarly, Libby Birch had a couple of really big moments. So both of those two I'll talk about a little bit later, but they were probably the next three in line for the votes. In terms of the best opposition player, I think it has to be Danny Ponter. And I remember watching her last year play us and feeling frustrated, and I felt that same compulsion during this Friday night game. She's a great player. Kicked 3 goals too, 10 touches, a couple of contested marks, 4 clearances, a couple of inside 50s. There were several times where she'd sort of start at the centre clearance and then from then on move forward and play a dangerous forward role. And yeah, she kicked 2 goals early in the fourth quarter, late in the game, that looked like she was going to really get the Crows back in it. And I think for me at least, she's just one of those opposition players that you love to hate. I'm sure if she played for us, I'd be stoked, but I was finding myself frustrated. I thought that she took a dive at one point, or certainly accentuated some contact that resulted in her kicking a goal. Yeah, just one of those players that rubs the opposition fans the wrong way, I think, which I think is a great thing to have in the game. So yeah, she was probably the most impactful. It was definitely either Ponter or Marinov, who I think were the most impactful for the Crows. Marinov had 25 touches and 16 tackles, so she's pretty unlucky to miss out. But I just think the fact that Ponter was able to kick 3 goals, she hit the post once as well, so she could have had 4. Was really, really effective, and looked like she was the one that could have taken the game away from us late if it had gone a different direction, if she'd got a little bit more service, because our key defenders were struggling with her. And I think I heard in the commentary that she's kicked the second most goals against North Melbourne ever. I think something like that anyway, but she's certainly, in the matches that I've seen her play against us, she's been a problem, and she was again. So if we do come up against the Crows in the finals, she would be the one that I'd be having a specific plan for, because she was super dangerous. So just to go over it again, best on for me, Jazzy Garner, Kate Shierlaw 3 votes, Ash Riddell 2, and Tess Craven 1 vote. So in terms of where that leaves the North Podium, the standings with only 1 home and away game remaining, Jazzy Garner is a long way out in front now on 31 votes. Ash Riddell moves to 19 votes. And Kate Shierlaw moves to 11 votes. That is your podium, or North Podium. Underneath that is O'Loughlin 7, Birch and Randall, and Mia King 5. And then some 3s and 2s and 1s underneath that. So Garner, Riddell and Shierlaw currently in, the fact that we've got Shierlaw as a 35-year-old, as a player that's sitting currently, to my estimations at least, as our third best or third most impactful player for the year, is remarkable. She's having a fantastic year. I think you could definitely say a better year than last year, which, she had a great year last year, but I think we spoke about it earlier on in the year. Randall's been playing a more unselfish role and allowing Shierlaw to be more of the goal kicker, whereas Randall's doing some of the tougher stuff and the tackling and the chasing. And, for us as fans, it doesn't really matter who's kicking the goals so long as they're being kicked. So, a fantastic year from Shierlaw so far. Hopefully that elbow's okay and she can have a big impact come finals time, because she's in some ripping form. I guess let's now have a look at just the game in general, look at some positives and negatives. And, I like to start with the negatives. I like to get the vegetables out of the way. And there are some things to chat about in this game, because a much more competitive performance, and you would hope this gives the coaches an opportunity to unpack a few extra things, as opposed to, the games where we cruise to a 40 or 50 point win. There's probably less to tease out. I definitely think there are some things to tease out of this game. The fact that we conceded 13 scoring shots to our 11 does speak to the fact that on a different day, this could have been a different result. I think the Crows missed a couple of tough shots, and we made some tough ones, and that was kind of the difference. It's not always going to work out that way. So you want to make sure in general that you're having, more scoring shots because that's going to give you the opportunity to kick more goals. I think that's that's pretty obvious. And I guess it's just for me, it's around framing it as how many scoring opportunities do you create and also how likely are those scoring opportunities. I think that probably, both sides had pretty even opportunities that were created, if that makes sense, but we just took them. So Bella Eddie's bomb on the run from 45 metres speaks to that. The Crows were missing shots like that all night, and then we went up the other end off, off turnover and off a bit of a half chance. Bella Eddie ends up with the ball on the run, and it took a nice little bounce. Easily could have banged into the post or just darted right and gone through for a point, but it went through for a goal. And that, I guess, like I said, that speaks to how our night went, in that those little half chances were coming off for us at times. Chelsea Randall kicked 0 goals 3. Danny Ponter kicked 3 goals 2. So they had 5 points between them. There were a couple of points that were rushed for the Crows, but that still speaks to the fact that the ball was getting in deep and into damaging positions, and that's obviously not what we want. I thought our defensive stocks weren't as strong as they have been in previous games. I'll talk about that in just a minute. But generally speaking, I think the pressure that we were able to put on the Crows midfielders through the middle part of the ground was not as strong. They were able to get some run and carry and kind of beat our zone at times and, get the ball inside 50, which, against those lesser sides, we haven't had any difficulties defending, but we did on this occasion. The Crows did get some scoring opportunities, and I'd say, halfway through the second quarter, it looked like they were going to put 40 or 50 points on us. So, yeah, definitely some things to tighten up around the way that we let the opposition move the ball and the way that we allow them to enter inside 50s, because, my next point here is we allowed their tools too much time and space, particularly in our defensive 50. You could see Sarah Wright frustrated a few times with the lack of players kind of filling that hole. Gould was able to lead into space a couple of times and take uncontested marks, and that's not necessarily a slight on Sarah Wright because, she's trailing the player. It's her job to just make sure that the kick has to be perfect, but she's expecting and needing other players to be filling the hole in front of Gould so that she doesn't have that space to lead into. So that's definitely something that we could work on structurally, because one of those times the ball came in relatively quickly and you could kind of see that potentially we were still setting up. But another, it was a lot slower, and I would have thought that we were filling those holes more effectively than we were. We've got enough defensively minded players down there like Birch and Wright and Ferguson that can definitely be doing that and communicating with other players to get into spots to make that happen. That's where you want your wings really falling in behind the footy at that point. So whether that's Amy Smith or Taylor Gatt, you want someone filling holes that potentially those tools for the opposition are going to lead into. We just didn't see that often enough. Ponter also just had too much room at times, and then even then when we double teamed her, Ferguson and Birch got outmarked at one point by Ponter inside 50, which is just unforgivable to be outmarked in a 2-on-1 situation. In general, we were outmarked 57-29, so the Crows had a lot more uncontested marks. They also had 9 inside 50 marks to our 2, and they took 10 contested marks to our 5. So we were dominated just in general in the air. That's something that we need to compete or have a high level of competitiveness at, because we are a tall side. It's supposed to be one of our strengths. We can't have all 3 of those main marking stats be losses for us, and I think that's why we saw Sarah Wright frustrated. We saw some defensive lapses from our group, and that's not something that we've seen for much of the year. Now, when I say defensive lapses, it's not as though there were gaping holes, but there were opportunities that the Crows were able to take. And that's why, Gould was able to take a few marks inside 50. Ponter was able to be opportunistic. And we were just fortunate that Chelsea Randall kicked 0 goals 3 because she was also looking dangerous inside 50 as well. So hopefully we're looking at what those structures look like with our 3 tall defensive players and also our more attackingly minded, offensively minded maybe, defensive players like Bresnahan, like O'Shea. They still test Craven. They still have a role to play defensively, and potentially it's maybe those players that need to be filling the hole and being a little bit brave and just sitting and hoping that they don't get smashed from behind, because, like I said, we allowed too many marks inside 50, and in general, you'd love to see us bring the ball to ground a little bit more and not allowing the opposition to mark it nearly 30 times more than we did. So that's definitely something that I'd like to see worked on during the week, and hopefully we can tighten that up come finals time. And then the final negative, I just think at times we did find it really difficult to transition from defense. That's something that we've been pretty good at this year in terms of just getting a quick hand passing forward, and then Riddell's really good at that in not attacking, but running past on an angle so that the hand pass could go to her and she's not in danger of being tackled immediately. It's sort of a forwards hand pass that still allows her to know what's coming. But yeah, in this game, we just weren't able to get that going. We weren't able to create space with our kicking as often as we would have liked. It often resulted in us having a couple of kicks coming out defensive 50 and then kicking to a contest, which, is not really a game to be kicking to a contest in the defensive half. I think we absolutely will kick to a contest in our forward half, but transitioning the footy, that hasn't been our go-to. So the Crows really pressured us and shut us down and created that congestion where we haven't been used to it. They really pressured our possession. I thought some of our younger players did struggle with that. Tripodi, I thought, struggled for space and time, where she's looked so clean in some other games. And, she's just one example. I don't think that she necessarily did too much wrong in this game, but she was not as clean and she didn't have as much time as we've seen her have in previous games. So, yeah, the Crows definitely went to work on how to shut our ball movement down. And I think in the first half of quarters, they were able to do that. It was just their ability to sustain that. I think as the quarters went on, we were able to break that down a little bit and get our ball movement moving the way that we want it. And I think, holistically speaking, what I'd like to see, and hopefully what the coaches are talking about, is when we are trying to come out of defensive 50, if it's a behind, or if we've got a mark or a free kick relatively deep inside 50, let's look at switching it quickly. Let's look at getting the ball moving fast, and just moving the ball helps you to move the defense around, or have them react to you, and then you can, all of a sudden, you're actually dictating, where they should be. I just don't think we did enough of that. We weren't necessarily patient enough, because you've got to know when to go and when to go slow. And I think at times we went, and it was not, and we ended up kicking to a contest. And there were other times where I thought we were too slow and we allowed the Crows to set up really well, and that meant that eventually we had to kick to a contest. So, look, obviously these are things that didn't cost us the game. We were able to work our way through them, or at least compensate for them. But yeah, they're things that hopefully we can improve ahead of finals, because, you would have to imagine that we're going to come up against 3 or 4 really good sides in finals, and we're going to have to find ways, like we did against the Crows, to fight through it. So there, I think the negatives. In terms of the positives, I mean, look, so many positive things. It was a really great game to watch. It was a great game for a neutral. I would have thought, sure, it wasn't super high scoring, but I thought up until the last quarter, it wasn't super congested. There were goals being kicked, and there was some really good play. I just think in the big moments in this game, we were able to stand up, and we certainly won more of the big moments. Ponter had some fantastic big moments for the Crows, but I'm just going to whip through some of the big wins, or the really impactful wins that we had across the game. And, you take a couple of these out and there's every chance that we don't win the game, just because of how impactful these were. I mean, I've spoken about Bella Eddy's 45-metre bomb that she kicked, which was a massive win. She also had a fantastic, really fast hands handball to Kate Shierlaw in the first quarter that set up that goal. That was a classic North Melbourne goal, where we created a contest, we put some pressure on, we kind of half turned them over, and then all of a sudden we've kicked a goal. But it was really fast hands from Eddie, unselfish, and exactly what you want to see early in the game. I spoke about it earlier on. Jazzy Garner's 2 goals were snaps from, almost half chances or nothing chances. And I tweeted at the time, it just must be so frustrating as an opposition player and or fan to be playing against Garner, because you can feel like you've shut her down, or that you've, stopped the play. All of a sudden she's kicked a goal from nothing. She's just so fast, so quick, so strong, and so damaging. Late in the first quarter, Erica O'Shea had a massive chase down Corral in the middle of the ground. Looked like the Crows were going to go inside 50 with about 30 seconds remaining on the clock. And yeah, she just had a really big rundown tackle, won a holding the ball, was huge for the context of the game, as it looked like the Crows were away and going to be heading inside 50 and potentially scoring late in the quarter, and it just shut that down completely. So that was a massive, massive moment and just showed her wheels. I feel like every game this year, there's been 3 or 4 moments within those games where O'Shea has just shown how much faster she is than every other player on the field. And that was another example of that. She was fantastic in that big moment. I think Vicky Wall showed her strength and agility through the hips a couple of times, avoiding tackles and just weaving her way through traffic in a really composed way. There was a massive tackle laid by Emma King in defensive 50 late in the second half. She did a really fantastic job not to go high. I thought that she, in particular, the last few weeks, she's been really clean with her hands, taking some fantastic marks, and also playing a really fair but physical game. And this was another example of that. It was a big tackle because, again, it was in defensive 50. The Crows were looking like they were going to score, and she put a stop to that with one foul tackle. There was a moment, I think, in the third quarter. Maybe it was the last, but Neve Martin made an absolute gut run to get free inside 50, gave us, an uncontested mark inside 50, which is something that we very rarely see. Just a fantastic gut run. Unfortunately, she missed the goal from about 30 metres out, but I'm not surprised because her running effort to get there and be an option was phenomenal. Kim Rennie is not necessarily a flashy player, but in the last quarter, there was a moment where the ball was spilling out of our inside 50. She was playing that role, that backstop role, like one kick off the contest. And it was just an ugly worm burner of a kick coming towards her. And as a ruck, it's really hard to get down low and make sure that ball stays in front of you. But I thought she did a fantastic job to just make sure, whilst she didn't pick it up, she kept it in front, or whether it was hitting her knee or her arm or her foot. She kept her body low, her center of gravity low, and made sure it stayed in front. And I thought that was a really underrated moment, a massive win, because that kept the ball inside 50. If it goes past her, there's a good chance it's in the Crows' hands and they're running on the counter and potentially scoring. So that was a massive moment. Similarly, Libby Birch had a fantastic defensive play in the third quarter, just desperately running back. The ball's bouncing, she runs after it, and then she essentially escorted it towards our goals and towards the boundary line without doing so, in a way that was going to cost us, or she was going to get caught holding the ball. It was bouncing around in an awkward way, so she wasn't necessarily able to get clean possession, but she moved it towards where it needed to be. The ball then came straight back in, and Mia King had a massive chase down holding the ball win, so to speak. So she was the tackler. So that was 2 big plays in a row, but that moment, I guess, to me was where you go, this is why we got Libby Birch into the side in the off-season, because it was just so composed. It wasn't bouncing up for her. She knows she was getting bared down on by the Crows' opposition players, but she stayed composed and she did what she needed to do. And then the follow-up from Mia King allowed us to not concede there. So there's just a sample of, I don't know how many that was, but some massive moments from the game that, like I said, I think if a couple of those don't happen, there's every chance we lose it, because they were so integral to us controlling the game and controlling the footy. So it was those kinds of big moments in the game that was able to win us the game, and some massive efforts. So that was really fantastic. I think another positive is that we were able to do a lot from clearance without necessarily dominating the hitouts. We certainly didn't dominate the hitouts. We lost those 47-31, but we were still able to win clearances 32-26. It was pretty even in the centre clearances, but around the ground we were a little stronger. And, that's the sign of a fantastic midfield. We were sharking the opposition hitouts at times. And it was the same old crew. Riddell had 6 clearances, Garner 5, Tripodi 4. So there's 15 of our 32 from our 3 first choice mids, or you'd probably put Mia King above Tripodi. I think she had 3 clearances. So there's the bulk of the work happening with that midfielder crew. And like I mentioned earlier, Garner's clearances weren't just little kicks sideways to clear it, into space. She was getting some significant meters on the ball. Riddell was also getting some good meters and hand passing to players on the way past. And that to me was, I made a note at some point during the game, we were scoring from turnover, but we were getting the meters in the ball from clearance. That's how we were getting our territory or winning our territory through clearance. So a great sign that we don't need King and Brenny to be dominating the ruck. We're still, so long as they're able to, do a job and compete, we're able to also, our mids are able to clean that up and win it at ground level. Particularly after they were able to get the first clearance out the front, and you went, this is going to be a really competitive midfield that we're playing against. After that, I think we did a great job of setting up defensively. At times, the Crows were sending two bodies to Garner, and she was able to push through and still have 5 clearances. So you can't stop her. And, it's the old adage, if you've got 2 on her, someone else has to be free. And whether that was Tripodi or Mia King, we had options around the stoppage. So I thought that was fantastic. And then I guess the final point, we had the capacity and the ability to just shut the game down after the Crows got a sniff with, 2 goals in the last quarter to Ponter, early-ish, got the margin back to 8 or 9 points. And you think, we're in trouble here. They've got momentum. And we just shut it down. We threw players around the footy. Shierlaw went behind the ball a little bit later. And, we snuffed out that momentum and stopped the Crows from being able to score. And whilst we were only able to kick a point for ourselves, the pressure and the tackling and the clear heads by us won out on the day. We knew that we didn't have to score to win that game. We just had to make sure that we stopped the Crows scoring. And, that's what we need to be able to do with the game on the line come finals time. We need to know when to put the cue in the rack, to stop playing that aggressive, kick inboard and play on at all costs kind of footy, because if you're up by 2 or 3 goals in the last quarter, you don't need to take those risks. You can sit back and rely on your defending, and that's your whole ground defence, because we saw that at times when the Crows got it deep in this game, we weren't necessarily good enough to completely snuff them out like we have been against the middling sides. But so long as we're applying that whole team and whole ground defence, we were able to slow them down and keep them to those 2 goals. And it was just a bit of a grind in the last 15 minutes of the quarter to get the win. But like I said off the top, a massive, massive win against another top 4 hopeful in the Crows, and a side that we've had difficulty against in the past. Beat them on their home deck, no less. I feel so good about how this side heading into finals. I think last year it was a really nervous finals period, and we were personally as a fan, I was a little bit unsure about how we would stack up against the other good sides last year in finals. I feel supremely confident about that this year, which is not to say that the job's done, of course. It's just that, we know we can do it. We may not, but we know we can. And I think that's what is so exciting about this women's side going into finals. However, there is one last home and away match that we need to get through, and that is Saturday, the 2nd of November. So that's this coming Saturday at 5:05 at Arden Street. We are playing the Gold Coast Suns, who are currently sitting 17th on the ladder. They beat the Swans last week, which was their first win for the year. They'd also had a draw earlier on. This round, they lost to Port Adelaide by a good 34 points. So, they shouldn't pose much of a threat, but you just never know. You don't want to go in with half your side out, and actually you can't afford to do that in the AFLW because of the list sizes, so that definitely won't be the case. But it's the last home and away game. We just need to finish off with a win, and I mentioned it off the top. This potentially is an opportunity to rest a couple before a massive qualifying final. Looking at the side, Kate Shierlaw has had some time off, so it's probably not going to be her. I'd look at someone like Riddell, who's at times looked like she's, not breaking down, but she's had a few niggles. She's had a taped shoulder. She looked to be not necessarily running at her full capacity at times during the year. Potentially look at resting either Rennie or Emma King for a game just to get them a bit of a spell, potentially. Libby Birch is someone, but because she's coming off an injury to that knee, maybe you want to give her a rest. Jenna Bruton's coming back from the Achilles, so again, she did get a rest mid-year, and maybe she would benefit from that. She's been a little quiet the last couple of weeks. Who knows if that's relating to how her body's feeling or not. And look, it's not going to be all of those players. It may be none of those players. I was just trying to think who are those ones that potentially could do with a little bit of a rest. no doubt that they'll all want to play. So I don't expect that we're going to get wholesale changes or anything like that. And it could be that it's no one because you just don't want to muck around with form too much. But, I think it's worth considering that there's a bigger picture, and it's not about, playing that one extra game in round 10 against the Gold Coast Suns. It's about who's going to be out there on grand final day, hopefully, in the side. Like I said, we've got to think about how we're getting Emma Carney back in. By the looks of it, she won't be ready for the first week of finals, so it's whether or not she's back for a potential semi or the preliminary final. You certainly, or I would not want to be bringing her back in for a grand final. You'd want her to have played a game or two before that, so hopefully we're able to get that into her before that happens, if that were to happen. And yeah, I honestly don't know who comes out for her, whether it's someone like Neve Martin, who's had some fantastic form this year. Like none of the half-backs, which is obviously the role that Carney plays, I think are deserving of being dropped. I don't know how you would drop Bresnahan or O'Shea or Craven from this side. So, yeah, whether it's someone that's playing a bit more time on the bench and someone who's a bit more flexible, and then we shuffle the magnets around slightly, I don't know. That's a tough decision for match committee, but we definitely will be welcoming her back at some point in the finals if we're there. So it's probably time to be talking about that, unfortunately, and someone's going to be unlucky to miss out because we've had such a strong side this year. Yeah, that's really all I have to say in terms of that. Like I said, Saturday, 5:05 at Arden Street, the last home and away home game for the year, but we have secured a home preliminary final. Nope, that would be nice. We've secured a home qualifying final, so that you would also think will be at Arden Street and hopefully not at Icon Park, fingers crossed. But yeah, we've got to get through another week until we get to that spot. I think that is going to do us for the podcast. Just a little teaser, I think there is another big interview coming this week. I don't want to absolutely confirm it in case things get changed or moved around, but you can look forward hopefully to another interview next or this week in the coming days. And other than that, I will speak to you after the last home and away round, and hopefully our undefeated season continues. Have a great week, and as always, go North. Thanks for listening to another episode of North Pod. If you give me a rating or review on your podcast service, that would be much appreciated. And please follow me on all social media at NorthPodShow. I'm on X or Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and I'm also very active on the North Melbourne subreddit. Hope you'll join me for the next episode.